Good evening, everybody. Before I call this meeting to order, I'll ask that everyone please silence cell phones and other electronic devices and remind council that our procedure bylaw forbids the use of cell phones during council and committee meetings. It is 6:30 p.m. I'll call this meeting to order. Brighton Council's work takes place on the traditional Indigenous territory of the Mississauga Anishinaabe, now of Alderville. We're thankful to be able to work and live on this land. We offer a land acknowledgement as a way to recognize, respect, and honor this territory, the treaties, the original occupants, their ancestors, and the historic connection they still have with these lands and waters. We are grateful for the opportunity that these lands and waters present to the people of Brighton, and grateful to work in partnership with the Indigenous community on their stewardship and sustainability. And before I ask for a motion for the agenda, I will note that Councillor Wheeldon is joining us via Zoom. I have a motion moved by Acting Deputy Mayor Rowley, seconded by Councillor Butwell, that Council amend the November 6, 2023 Council agenda to remove item 10.4, staff report regarding 2024 fees and charges from the agenda. Is there any discussion? Those in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. Motion moved by Councillor Fredis, seconded by Acting Deputy Mayor Rowley. The Council approved the November 6, 2023 agenda as amended. Is there any discussion? Those in favor? There being none opposed, that motion's carried. Members of Council, do you have any declarations of pecuniary interest? And if so, please state the general nature thereof. There are none noted. Are there any announcements this evening? Acting Deputy Mayor Rowley.
Thank you, Mayor. I have two. First off, I was privileged to attend and participate yesterday in the Armistice Day ceremony at Alderville First Nations. It was quite an experience for me, so it was great. My second announcement has to do with cookies. Smile cookies. Next week, I will be participating in decorating some more small cookies on behalf of the food bank. So this is a fundraiser for them through Tim Hortons. So if you have time and you have a few bucks, please pick up some cookies in order to sponsor the food bank. Just on that note, I should say we don't speak about the food bank very much. We're doing pretty good there. However, our numbers are seeing increases monthly now.
What day is Smile Cookie Day?
I think it's Monday through till Friday next
All week next week?
All week. And I will be there Tuesday.
That's what I wanted to know. Any other announcements? Councillor Wright.
In chatting with a few different business owners downtown, I just want to make a statement that things are really tough and trying for our local businesses, and Christmas is coming. So I would like to issue a challenge to council and staff to buy local for Christmas. Hit your downtown stores and support the businesses. With CEBA loans looming, there's a real risk that the face of downtown Brighton could change.
Thank you for that. Are there any other announcements? While the acting deputy mayor was in Alderville, I was attending Our Legion's Veterans Lunch yesterday. A good crowd, always a nice turnout, and nice to see our the squadron ATES that is attached to Brighton on hand. The acting squadron commander and the acting squadron chief were both there for that. It was a nice turnout as always for that Veterans Lunch. And today I attended a joint county council Alderville First Nation Council meeting. It was the first that we have done in this term of both county council and this term of the Alderville First Nation Council. They were just sworn in July, I think. We discussed things of mutual interest, things like the broadband project across Northumberland, policing, affordable housing. There's an affordable housing project underway with the county that includes the Ontario Aboriginal Housing Corporation or Aboriginal Housing Services, and the location of a communications tower, which some of you will remember was a hot topic last year. That communications tower will be located on a hill in Alderville, and the county's working with the First Nation to the tower actually already exists. It's just the equipment needs to be put on it, but we need to move the osprey nest. So a large pole needs to be constructed, and the neighbor needs to be moved, and so that's going to happen in the coming weeks. And with that, we'll move to the adoption of the minutes. It's moved by Councillor Butwell, seconded by Councillor Fredis, that Council adopt the October 16th, 2023 Council meeting minutes as presented. Is there any discussion? Those in favor? Are there any opposed? Motion's carried. We have no public meeting this evening. We have no delegations or presentations. Madam Clerk, are you aware of any citizens' comments? Nope. Brings us straight into staff reports. First report is the Orchard Gate Stormwater Facility follow-up. Mr. Gooding, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight, sir?
Through the mayor, no, I do not.
Thank you. Motion is moved by Councillor Butwell, seconded by Councillor Fredis, that Council receive the staff report, Orchard Gate Stormwater Facility follow-up, and that staff work in conjunction with the developer of the Orchard Gate subdivision and the Ministry of the Environment, Conservation and Parks to update the certificate of approval for the Orchard Gate Stormwater Facility to reflect the recommended improvements from GD Jewel Engineering peer review, and further that the developer complete maintenance and design improvement works prior to the municipality assuming the stormwater facility. Is there any discussion? Councillor Fredis.
Through the chair to Mr. Gooding, thank you. I've read the report and I'm still a little puzzled, and I'm hoping you can kind of clarify for me. Page 4 of the study, I guess, goes back to an earlier staff report, implies that Jewel first suggested lowering weirs and widening the base to achieve a 1 in 100-year event, but now their recommendation is a 1 in 50-year event. So I guess my questions are, did that modification occur? And could you kind of clarify for me why 1 in 50-year event is appropriate when initially the concern, and I've always understood the concern to be a 1 in 100-year event.
Mr. Gooding.
Sadly, through the mayor to Councillor Fredis is, so with stormwater ponds, you have quality and quantity. So the quantity or quality of the pond, so the ability for it to treat is not changing. It's still going to be the 100-year event, all regulatory requirements. So that's not being adjusted. The quantity is how much is held back, and the idea with that is your post-matching pre. So as you create more runoff based on the development, you create a pond if necessary to hold the water in order to allow it to release that exist at the previous or development. So in this case, our standard requirements are to require that is one of our parameters. So it's you have to have it where you do the 1 year, 100 year. You have to provide quantity or quality treatment and such, and that's our standard design requirements. If they can't meet the standard requirements or it's not necessary, engineers will review and say, look, it's not required. So example would be is further up on the watershed, or sorry, further down on the watershed, Roslyn Estates and Bright Meadows do not have quantity. So they just go directly treat the water and it goes right into the receiving body of water, which is the Butler Creek, because it doesn't need to have it held back and restricted. So what happened is when this pond was constructed, the developer just followed our standard requirements because perhaps they had the land to do so. When we reviewed it with our master stormwater plan, they applied a different stormwater event to it or scenario, and it ended up identifying that it was deficient in meeting the 1/100 years. So we went back and had the report peer reviewed. Peer reviewer said, look, we don't, and that's Jules' engineering recommendation, that we don't need it. It actually was never required in the first place. So we perhaps shouldn't even have put it in, just like we have in successive developments being Roslyn Estates and Bright Meadows. So what he's saying is by widening the outlet channel, the weir, it lowers the level in the storage in that pond to a 1 to 50 year event and allows us to have still a foot freeboard in that pond. Is it required? No, it's not. It's just we already have a pond, so we might as well apply it and keep it. It's just at the lower standard would be acceptable to meet our standard for our stormwater requirements. Again, I just reaffirm is the fact we've allowed other developers to do this in good engineering, and in this case, we're revisiting it just to get it up to current standard.
Thank you. Any other questions? Go ahead.
Just a follow-up, if I may. So in light of this modification to the spec, to allow a little better free flow, I gather is the intent here. We'd heard recently that there are some homes on Royal Gala that are having some flooding issues that they attribute to this pond. Will this reduce the risk of flooding to those folks?
Mr. Gooding?
Through the mayor to council is it will reduce it in the sense that now that pond elevation is going to be lower during higher stormwater events. Also during lower events, it'll allow it to flow through a little quicker, perhaps. If you get the characteristic of a 1 to 50 a year and above storm event. In all cases, we would advise the public to put in a backup or a sump pump and a backup battery before that. I wouldn't rely solely on outside environmental constraints to protect your basement. So I would say that it's going to help. I don't know if it's going to exactly if it completely would solve, but it definitely would help.
Thank you. Anything further from members of council? All those in favor? Being any opposed? Motion's carried. That brings us to the Loyalist Drive Bulk Water Station report. Mr. Gooding, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight?
Through the mayor, no, I do not.
I have a motion moved by Councillor Butwell, seconded by Councillor Fredis, that council receive the staff report, Loyalist Drive Bulk Water Station, and that council award the Loyalist Drive Bulk Water Station contract to Fidelity Engineering and Construction Incorporated in the amount of $209,555.59, inclusive of 15% contingency and the expended portion of the HST. Is there any discussion? Those in favor? There being none opposed, that motion's carried. 10.3 HomeBuild for Healthcare Fees Forgiveness. Director Whitfield, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight?
No, I do not.
I have a motion moved by Acting Deputy Mayor Rowley, seconded by Councillor Butwell. The council received the report on HomeBuild for Healthcare, and the council directs staff to provide a grant for $18,209.30 to the Trenton Memorial Hospital Foundation, and that council authorizes staff to transfer $18,209.30 from the contingency reserve to fund the grant. Is there any discussion? Councillor Fredis.
Through the chair to Director Whitfield. So if I understand it correctly, as a result of council direction, we've already granted the permit to the developer for this home without a charge. And now we're giving money to the Trent Memorial Hospital Foundation to cover that. I guess the missing element that I'm trying to figure out is who writes us the check to come back to close the loop.
So we what council did was provide forgiveness to fees and charges, but we're not permitted to do that under the Municipal Act. So in an effort to make sure that that happens, the developer will pay the $18,000+ to the municipality. The municipality, through development charges, the municipality will provide a grant to Trenton Memorial Hospital Foundation for $18,000 out of contingency. Did I get that about right?
Yes, Mayor, that's pretty correct.
Because we
That-
can't forgive it directly.
I understood that
Yeah.
part, but from reading this report, I didn't see what that funding came back. There's nothing in here that says the developer would then pay us for this. And he'd already been given this. So I just wanted to close that loop.
Through you, Mayor
Please
Ostrander.
do.
It's required that building permit will need to be paid for and development charges will need to be funded. And the only upper hand we have, the consequence to not paying it once we issue the grant, is to stop build, to put a stop work order on it until it's paid.
So the municipality has received or will receive the $18,200+ from the developer.
I don't see any issue with that.
Thank you. Anything further from members of council? Those in favor? There being none opposed, that motion is carried. .4 was removed. 10.5, 2023 Department Work Plans, third quarter report. CAO Castleman, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight, sir?
I do not.
I have a motion moved by Councillor Wright, seconded by Councillor Butwell, that council receive the 2023 third quarter work plan report for information. Is there any discussion? Those in favor? There being none opposed, that motion is carried. We have no notices of motion or motions. Brings us to the council follow-up list. I'll read the motion and ask if there's any questions or comments. I have a motion moved by Councillor Wright, seconded by the Acting Deputy Mayor Rowley, that council receive the follow-up list updated to November 23, 2023 as information. Are there any questions or comments on the follow-up list? All those in favor? There being none opposed, that motion is carried. We have nothing listed on unfinished business, which brings us to bylaws. First bylaw is a memorandum of understanding with the Conservation Authority, moved by Acting Deputy Mayor Rowley, seconded by Councillor Butwell. The council gives a bylaw its first, second, and third reading and finally passes on this date, being a bylaw to authorize the mayor and clerk to execute a memorandum of understanding between the Corporation of the Municipality of Brighton and the Lower Trent Region Conservation Authority to provide certain non-mandatory programs and services to the municipality of Brighton. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? There being none opposed, that motion is carried. And the bulk water station, moved by Councillor Butwell, seconded by Councillor Fredis, that council gives a bylaw its first, second, and third reading and finally passes on this date, being a bylaw to authorize the mayor and the clerk to execute an agreement between the Corporation of the Municipality of Brighton and Fidelity Engineering and Construction Incorporated for the PW 2023-17 Loyalist Drive bulk water station project. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? There being none opposed, that motion is carried. Agreement with the Royal Bank for banking services, moved by Acting Deputy Mayor Rowley, seconded by Councillor Butwell, that council gives a bylaw its first, second, and third reading and finally passes on this date. Being a bylaw to authorize the mayor and the treasurer to execute a banking agreement between the Corporation of the Municipality of Brighton and the Royal Bank of Canada for a 5-year period commencing August 1st, 2023 and ending on August 1st, 2028, with an option for a further 5-year extension. Are there any questions or comments? Councillor Wheeldon.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. I understand that we want to work with a local bank. I'm wondering if we have ever considered working with a credit union, which just by its very structure keeps more of its resources locally. I'm also concerned that the Royal Bank is actually the largest funder of fossil fuels in the world and is currently under investigation for greenwashing. because they talk a big game about sustainability, but they continue to grow the fossil fuel industry. So those kinds of things make me wonder if that's the best place for us to put our money. But I'm wondering, Director Whitterfield, if a credit union is an option.
Director Whitfield?
Through you, Mayor, to Councillor Wheeldon. It has, first of all, an RFP hasn't been issued to ask for that. We looked at the RFP that we could piggyback on with County of Northumberland, and the bank that was awarded that RFP was Scotiabank, and we don't have one in the municipality. And we don't have a credit union within the municipality either. My concern would be the amount of staff time and mileage and, the change, first of all, the changes that would have to be made to our systems would be time consuming and probably difficult. And I don't know if a credit union could support us in that way. I'm not sure of the rating of a credit union as far as bank ratings go. But it wasn't that we excluded credit unions, but we looked at our local banks. We were with CIBC, I think, just prior to me starting with the municipality in 2003. And we've been with RBC ever since. The consideration that we gave was local bank staff can easily make deposits, sometimes several times a day, depending on, if it's tax due date or that type of thing. And also consideration to the relationships that have been built, and that our systems, EFTs, the incoming payments through telephone banking and internet banking, are all being consolidated by RBC and giving us one upload file. There's a lot of reasons why it makes sense to stay where we are. And the rates that we get are the prime rate less 1.75%, which equals what 5.45%. I think I've said that a dozen times in the last few weeks. And when I looked at the Northumberland County RFP and the response that they received from Scotiabank, the rate was very similar, although it was the overnight rate, which is 5%, and then it was plus 0.45, it still comes out to 5.45%. So I thought this was in the interest of the municipality and residents. This was our best option.
Thank you, Director Whitfield. May I follow up there?
Please do.
All of that makes a lot of sense. And as someone who has recently changed banks, I know it's a lot of work even for an individual household. I can't imagine the job it would be to change from municipality. I wonder if it's possible to note concern about fossil fuel investments at this stage. And obviously that would need a motion of council, but I just would like to express something.
I think it would be appropriate if you wanted to do that, Councillor Wheeldon, to do so through a notice of motion. I think council would consider that, and it would be appropriate procedurally.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate that.
You bet. Anything further on the motion? All those in favor? There being none opposed, that motion's carried. The next bylaw is the agreement. Nope, we just did that one. Next bylaw is the agreement for the Trillium grant for the shed washrooms. Moved by Councillor Wright, seconded by Councillor Butwell, that council gives a bylaw its first, second, and third reading and finally passes on this date. Being a bylaw to authorize the treasurer to execute a grant funding agreement between the Corporation of the Municipality of Brighton and the Ontario Trillium Foundation for the shed washroom renovations. Is there any discussion? Good news. Thank you, Mr. Miller, for writing what is no doubt another excellent grant application. Every year we seem to get something out of these folks. So thank you. And after you retire, perhaps you'd come back as our grant writer. They don't come cheap, I understand, by the way. All those in favor? There being none opposed, that motion's carried. Brings us to reports, minutes of advisory committees of council and review teams. The first is the Committee of the Whole, October 23rd and 30th for the 2024 capital budget. It's moved by Councillor Fredis, seconded by Acting Deputy Mayor Rowley, that council adopt the minutes of the October 23rd, 2023 Committee of the Whole meetings as presented. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? There being none opposed, that motion's carried. And a motion moved by Councillor Butwell, seconded by Councillor Fredis, that council approve the recommendation from the Committee of the Whole October 30th, 2023. Moved by Councillor Jeff Wheeldon and seconded by Councillor Ann Butwell to approve the 2024 capital budget at a levy of $1,704,236. Is there any discussion? Those in favor? There being none opposed, that motion's carried. Motion moved by Councillor Butwell, seconded by Councillor Fredis, that council adopt the October 30th, 2023 Committee of the Whole meeting minutes as presented. Is there any discussion? Those in favor? There being none opposed, that motion's carried. Bringing us to the Applefest Committee meeting minutes of September 12th and the draft minutes of October 25th. Moved by Councillor Fredis, seconded by Acting Deputy Mayor Rowley, that council received the September 12th, 2023 Applefest Steering Committee meeting minutes as presented. Is there any discussion? Those in favor? There being none opposed, that motion's carried. And a motion moved by Councillor Wright, seconded by Councillor Fredis, that council receive or approve the recommendation from the Applefest Committee regarding the proposed 2024 budget to be considered during the budget deliberations, as illustrated in the draft minutes of October 25th, 2023. Councillor Wright, this is your motion. Would you like to receive or approve? Thank you. You okay with that, Councillor Fredis? Thank you. Is there any discussion? Acting Deputy Mayor Rowley.
Thank you, Mayor. I can't pull the minutes up right now, but I'm assuming that when we look at those minutes or you look at the budget, there will be an increase. And we just want council to realize that next year is the 50th anniversary for Applefest. So the increases will speak to some extra added events for them.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor? There being none opposed, that motion's carried. Bringing us to reports and minutes of statutory committees, boards, and external agencies. The first is the library, moved by Councillor Butwell, seconded by Councillor Fredis. The council received the September 27th, 2023 Brighton Public Library Board meeting minutes as presented. Is there any discussion? Those in favor? Being none opposed, that motion's carried. Lower Trent Conservation Authority, moved by Councillor Fredis, seconded by Acting Deputy Mayor Rowley, that council received the September 14th, 2023 Lower Trent Conservation Authority meeting minutes as presented. Is there any discussion? Those in favor? There being none opposed, that motion's carried. That brings us to correspondence, direction items, endorsements, communications, and petitions. The first comes from Cornerstone Family Violence Prevention Center, moved by Acting Deputy Mayor Rowley, seconded by Councillor Butwell. The council support the request from Cornerstone Family Violence Prevention Center, request to raise a wrapped in courage flag in November as a symbol of our community's commitment to support survivors and address rising rates of gender-based violence, including femicide. Is there any discussion? Is it the expectation that we raise it for all of November? Or would it be okay if we raise it after Remembrance Day is done? So we'll raise it on, do we even have the flag? So we'll raise it once we get the flag, but after Remembrance Day. Is that fair? And we don't need to write that down. It just says in November, so we'll take care of it then. Is there any further discussion? Those in favor? There being none opposed, that motion's carried. Brings us to FYI correspondence. The first comes from Base Commander Colonel Leighton James, moved by Councillor Fredis, seconded by Acting Deputy Mayor Rowley, that Council received a letter from Colonel Leighton L.J. James, 8-Wing Canadian Forces Base Trenton Commander, as information. Is there any discussion? Those in favor? There being none opposed, that motion's carried. And the Northumberland County updates, moved by Councillor Wright, seconded by Councillor Fredis, that Council received the updates from Northumberland County, October 16th to the 27th, 2023, as information. Is there any discussion? Those in favor? There being none opposed, that motion's carried. That brings us to question period. I don't see anyone online. Either two members in the gallery wish to ask any questions with regard to any item on tonight's agenda? Thank you. That will bring us to our closed session. Before we read the item to go into close, we will take a 10-minute recess. No, we will not. What will we do? Got it. First, we will move to go into closed session, and then we will take a 10-minute recess so that we can end the live stream. And I will advise anybody watching on YouTube that when we go into closed session, we will be ending the live stream for the duration of tonight's meeting. It's moved by Acting Deputy Mayor Rowley, seconded by Councillor Butwell, that Council resolve itself into closed session November 6, 2023 at 7:01 p.m. pursuant to the Ontario Municipal Act RSO 2001 as amended, subsection 239(2)B. Personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, medical funding agreements for 2 potential general practitioners. Is there any discussion? Those in favor? There being none opposed, that motion's carried. And now we will take a 10-minute recess.